This documentary is for educational purposes only. It covers historical events of World War II in a factual and respectful way. The content does not promote or glorify any ideology, group, or individual. They were farm boys, factory workers, barely 20 years old. They left everything they knew to fight for people they'd never met. In the 1940s, when freedom was on the edge of collapse, ordinary men crossed oceans and borders and changed the course of history. The aftermath of World War I led to the collapse of four major empires: Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. The Treaty of Versailles imposed heavy sanctions on Germany, fostering resentment and economic collapse. The treaty blamed Germany for the war and forced it to pay significant reparations, reduce its military, and lose territory. Germans felt humiliated, angry, and betrayed by their government. They viewed it as a harsh and one-sided dictated peace, that unfairly blamed them for the war and imposed crippling economic burdens and territorial losses. The people dubbed the government that signed the treaty the November Criminals. The widespread resentment destabilized the Weimar Republic and fueled extremist movements. Within this cloud of resentment, a radical named Adolf Hitler rose to prominence. Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party, came to power in Germany on January 30, 1933. That same day, German President Paul von Hindenburg appointed him Chancellor. The Weimar Republic had been established almost 15 years earlier, at the end of World War I, 1914 to 1918. It was a parliamentary democracy that guaranteed equality of all citizens before the law. Adolf Hitler and his party strongly opposed the Weimar Republic. They considered parliamentary democracy to be a weak form of government and despised the Republic's leaders for signing the Treaty of Versailles. On November 8, 1923, Hitler and other party leaders attempted to overthrow the government in the German state of Bavaria. They planned to march on Berlin to take over the German government. At the time, the party had about 55,000 members. This attempted takeover, known as the Beer Hall Putsch, quickly failed. Hitler was arrested, tried, and convicted of treason. The trial made him famous, especially in right-wing nationalist circles. The Bavarian authorities then banned and dissolved the party, its stormtrooper units, SA, and its affiliated newspapers. While Hitler was in prison, the political and economic situation in the Weimar Republic stabilized. The German economy grew stronger, the political system functioned, and art and culture flourished. When he was released from prison in December 1924, the political and economic landscape had changed. He then realized that his party would not be able to take control of Germany by force. Thus, Adolf Hitler changed the party's political strategy. He decided they would compete in parliamentary elections and attempt to win mass support. This was called the path of legality. In early 1925, the Bavarian government lifted the ban on the party. Hitler worked to revive the movement and reunify it under his control. Party leaders made efforts to rebuild the membership and also founded new party-affiliated paramilitary groups, such as the SS. The party's sophisticated grassroots organization would eventually help bring Hitler to power in 1933. Within the month of January, he went from being an outsider to being appointed Chancellor of Germany. As Chancellor, he quickly set out to fulfill his campaign promises and transform Germany from a democracy into an authoritarian state. Adolf Hitler led a right-wing coalition government which included the Nazi Party and the German National People's Party, DNVP. In late February, the German parliament building was set ablaze in an incendiary attack. This was used as an opportunity to seize more power. Hitler convinced Hindenburg to use Article 48 to enact the Reichstag fire decree. The first article in this emergency measure suspended civil liberties and due process indefinitely. The second article allowed the national government to take over state governments. The subsequent March 1933 parliamentary election took place in an atmosphere of intimidation and fear tactics against their leftist political opponents. Most Communist Party leaders were arrested, including party chairman Ernst Thälmann. The government used the Reichstag fire decree to dramatically limit the ability of the Social Democrats and Communists to campaign. In the elections, the Nazi Party won almost 44% of the vote. Their conservative coalition partners won 8%. Combined, this gave Hitler's government more than 50% support in parliament. Amid oppression and fear, the Social Democrats earned 18%, and the Communists received 12%. The March 1933 election was the last multi-party election in Germany until after World War II. On March 23, the newly elected parliament passed the Enabling Act. This law gave Adolf Hitler the power to enact legislation without parliament. Under this law, he was even able to enact legislation that violated the constitution. The party's rise to power was complete in August 1934, when President Paul von Hindenburg died. A new law combined the offices of President and Chancellor and granted Adolf Hitler the powers of both offices. Hitler became the absolute ruler of Germany. There were no longer any legal or constitutional limits to his authority. The world awoke to thunder on September 1, 1939. Before dawn, German tanks and troops stormed across the Polish border, and the Luftwaffe's bombers roared overhead. The Blitzkrieg, lightning war, had begun. In just weeks, Poland was crushed, carved up between Hitler's Germany and Stalin's Soviet Union, bound by their cynical Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On September 3, Britain and France declared war, but their armies stayed largely silent behind the Maginot Line. Europe held its breath. In April 1940, Hitler struck north, Denmark fell in a day, Norway within weeks. A month later, the whole of Europe cracked open. The German war machine sliced through the Ardennes, outflanked French defenses, and encircled Allied forces at Dunkirk. In a miracle of courage and small boats, over 330,000 soldiers were rescued from the beaches. But France was doomed. By June, Paris fell, and the world watched in disbelief as the swastika flew from the Eiffel Tower. Only Britain stood alone. In the skies over England, the Royal Air Force battled the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain, the first major campaign fought entirely in the air. Outnumbered but unbroken, Britain's few turned back Hitler's invasion plans. The Blitz followed, months of bombing raids that lit London's night sky with fire, yet the British spirit never faltered. After Germany's lightning victories in France and the Low Countries in 1940, Mussolini saw an opportunity to grab territory while victory seemed certain. On June 10, 1940, Italy declared war on France and Britain, hoping to share in the spoils. Mussolini boasted that Italy needed only a few thousand dead to earn a seat at the peace table. He was disastrously wrong. Italy invaded Egypt from its colony in Libya in 1940, hoping to capture the Suez Canal. But the British counter-attack, led by General O'Connor, shattered Italian forces, capturing tens of thousands of prisoners. Germany had to step in to save its ally. Hitler sent Erwin Rommel and the Afrika Korps, beginning the famous Desert War. In October 1940, Mussolini launched an invasion of Greece, without even telling Hitler in advance. The invasion failed spectacularly. The Greeks pushed Italian forces back into Albania, humiliating Mussolini. Germany had to intervene again in 1941, conquering both Greece and Yugoslavia, delaying Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union by crucial weeks. Hitler then broke his pact with Stalin and launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history. Over 3 million Axis troops stormed into the Soviet Union. At first, the Wehrmacht seemed unstoppable, cities like Kiev and Smolensk fell, and by December they were at the gates of Moscow. But the Russian winter struck like a hammer, and Soviet resistance stiffened. The tide began to turn. Italian colonies in Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somaliland were quickly overrun by British and Allied forces in 1941, ending Italy's short-lived East African Empire. Meanwhile, far across the world, another storm brewed. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, plunging the United States into the war.
On December 7, 1941, Japan, like its infamous Axis partners, struck first and declared war afterwards. Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment, but more costly to Japan was the effectiveness of its foul attack in immediately unifying America in its determination to fight and win the war thrust upon it, hard at airfields. Hickam Field, northwest of Honolulu, and the Ford Island Naval Plane Base were the first objectives of Japan's treachery. Direct hits were scored on hangars, and these were badly shattered. Equipment and airplane supplies were reduced to smoldering ruins. Here at the Naval Air Station is grim and
overnight, a global conflict became truly worldwide. 1942 was the year of turning points. In North Africa, General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, pushed toward Egypt, but the British stopped him at El Alamein. In the Pacific, American forces halted Japan's expansion at Midway, sinking 4 aircraft carriers and changing the balance of naval power. And in the east, the bloodiest battle in history raged, Stalingrad. The city became a furnace of destruction, fought house to house. When the Soviet counterattack encircled the German Sixth Army, it marked the beginning of Hitler's downfall. By 1943, Italy's defeats were undeniable and the Allies were on the offensive. They invaded Sicily and Italy. By mid-1943, King Victor Emmanuel III dismissed Mussolini and had him arrested, toppling Mussolini's fascist regime. Bitter fighting continued up the Italian peninsula. Italy's new Prime Minister, Marshal Pietro Badoglio, secretly negotiated with the Allies. On September 3, 1943, Italy signed an armistice, effectively surrendering. When the news broke, Germany reacted immediately, occupying much of Italy and disarming its former ally. The year 1944 was the Allies' great comeback. From the skies and seas came Operation Overlord, D-Day, June 6, 1944. Under stormy skies, thousands of Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in history. Slowly, painfully, they broke through German defenses and liberated Paris by August. Meanwhile, in the east, the Red Army surged westward, rolling through Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltic states. But the war was not over yet. In December, Hitler launched one last desperate counterattack, the Battle of the Bulge in the Ardennes. For weeks, the snow ran red, but the Allies held firm. The German army was spent. In 1945, the walls closed in on Nazi Germany. From the west came the Americans, British, and Canadians, from the east, the Soviets. Germany's cities lay in ruins, and its army was shattered. As Soviet forces encircled Berlin in April, Hitler retreated to his bunker. On April 30, 1945, he took his own life. A week later, Germany surrendered unconditionally. Victory in Europe, WWII, arrived on May 8, 1945. Crowds filled the streets, tears and laughter mingling as church bells rang across the continent. But the war still burned in the Pacific. Japan, though battered, refused to surrender, until the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The world entered the atomic age, and Japan surrendered soon after. The Second World War, the deadliest conflict in human history, was over. Nazi Germany, they carried out the Holocaust, murdering about 6 million Jews and millions of others, Roma, Poles, Soviets, disabled people. committed mass executions of civilians and destruction of entire villages across occupied Europe. Created concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. Forced labor, medical experiments, and starvation policies were instituted to inflict suffering. Imperial Japan, responsible for the Nanjing Massacre, human experimentation by Unit 731, and abuse of POWs and civilians across Asia. Millions died from killings, forced labor, and sexual slavery. Fascist Italy used chemical weapons and committed massacres in Ethiopia and North Africa under Mussolini's rule. United States and United Kingdom conducted massive bombing campaigns on cities like Dresden, Tokyo, and Hiroshima/Nagasaki, causing hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths. The US also interned Japanese Americans during the war. Soviet Union committed mass executions, for example, Katyn massacre, deportations, and sexual violence during the advance through Eastern Europe. France and Britain suppressed anti-colonial movements in their empires using violent reprisals. The Axis powers committed large-scale, systematic atrocities motivated by racial and imperial ideology. The Allies, while fighting to end fascism, also caused enormous civilian suffering through strategic bombings and repression. The war's devastation led to new international laws on war crimes and human rights after 1945. When the smoke cleared, more than 70 million people were dead. Empires had fallen. Cities were rubble. The United Nations rose from the ashes, and the Cold War began to take shape. Yet, from that devastation emerged a renewed determination: never again. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.